What is up, everybody? Welcome to the Football Forecast, episode number 17 on November 19th, 2019. It's a beautiful Tuesday night, and we got a lot to talk about in the college football world. Lots and lots to talk about, and the NFL world as well. Biggest thing everybody's talking about. Well, first I should say we didn't have an episode last week. And so last week we couldn't get to cover what we would have covered last week. So let's go ahead and cover it. What did we miss? LSU beat Alabama. All right, so we all knew that. You guys all saw that last week. LSU beat Alabama by 5 points, and Alabama went down in the polls in the college football playoff rankings to number 4. And this week, another tragedy has struck Alabama with the loss of Tua Tagovailoa against Mississippi State. Tua was hit right in the hip, landed on his leg, and was down, was apparently screaming in pain, got up, and to everyone's no surprise, he had an injury, and this one was a season ender. It's a dislocated hip. And everybody knows this. I'm just kind of restating it. But yeah, dislocated hip, and he's out for the season. But his recovery is going great, and he should be back to athletics within 3 months and throwing a football by the spring. So that's really good news for Tua, but it's bad news for Alabama because now Alabama does not have their star quarterback, one of the best quarterbacks to ever play college football, as their starter, as their guy. Now they have to rely on Mac Jones to beat Auburn in 2 weeks in the Iron Bowl and try to lead them back to a playoff spot. They're in the playoff hunt, and they are hungry for a shot. So that's what we're going to talk about for the majority of today, I think. I think that's what everybody's talking about in football. It just has compensated for all the lack of other football news. I mean, this is the only thing that's going on, the only thing people are talking about. Everybody else is either winning or getting beat. And Alabama's, we don't know what's going on with them. So how the biggest question is, how is this going to affect Alabama moving forward?
Well, I mean, what it basically does, it just it means that if they're going to have any chance at all of making the college football playoff, they'll have to beat Auburn. They'll have to do it with Mac Jones at quarterback. And it's not like Alabama couldn't win games before the Tua came along. They, a lot of times Alabama usually either had a good quarterback or they had what you call a game manager. Of course, Alabama most years always had a really strong defense to fall back on and a strong running game. The running game this year is not quite as good as it has been in past seasons. Defense definitely not as good. Everybody knows that. I think even with Mac Jones at quarterback, I think Alabama is plenty good enough to beat Auburn in that last game. The question is, would just simply beating what will probably end up being an 8-3 Auburn team, beating them in a close game at home, will that be enough to earn them a spot in the playoff, or do they have to win convincingly? I don't really see Alabama going in there and beating Auburn convincingly. I think if they do win, it'll be a relatively close game, probably by a touchdown at the most. And of course, you have to watch what's going to happen in the other games. Some other things are still going to have to happen in order to give Alabama that shot. But for Alabama, what it basically does is it's going to cause them to have a little bit more of a conservative approach on offense. It's going to be probably safer passes, probably a little bit more running the ball than what they've been doing. So it's going to be a little bit more balanced, a little bit more conservative. And you hope the defense performs better. What helps Alabama is Auburn is not a great offensive team. They have had trouble running the ball at times this year. Bo Nix is erratic as a quarterback. Sometimes he plays well. Sometimes he tends to be off on his passes some. So his performance is kind of up and down. So you never know quite what you're going to get from him. Auburn's defense, is going to be good. It has been all year.
Derek Brown. I mean, Derek Brown will mess that team up, and that's the one thing that I was scared of. Seeing Mac Jones go into this matchup is Derek Brown getting to him. How is he going to be under pressure?
No, but I think it's probably going to end up being a close game. I think, as in a lot of these Iron Bowls, it's going to be determined by. It could be determined by a big key player too. Turnovers are going to be big. And so we'll have to see. But, Alabama, of course, has to win the game. They won't have any chance of making the playoff. But I don't foresee them winning big. It's probably going to be a close game one way or the other. And then you still have to have other things happen. You're still going to need Georgia to probably lose to LSU in the SEC championship. Looks like that's who's going to be meeting in that. And other than that, what's going to help Alabama the most is LSU winning out, Ohio State winning out, and Clemson winning out. And of course, you can kind of assume that's going to happen anyway because Clemson really doesn't have anybody on their schedule. That's any kind of a threat to them, really. LSU, of course, has to play Georgia. But as far as ending the season, I think LSU has Arkansas and Texas A&M left, and I don't think they should have any problem winning either one of those games because Arkansas, they're just terrible, and A&M, they're just not good enough offensively to hang with LSU for 4 quarters. Ohio State will likely win out. They do have to play Penn State this week, so that's a big game. But I would expect Ohio State to win. And if they do, that will help Alabama, and that will also effectively knock Penn State out of the playoff race because that will give them 2 losses. And like I said earlier, LSU, if they beat Georgia in the SEC championship, which is like who's going to meet there, that would give Georgia 2 losses, so that would help Alabama as well. The only other real threat to Alabama, talking about the playoff, would be whoever wins the Pac-12 and or Big 12 championships. I'm not sure Oklahoma, even if they went out and win the Big 12 championship, would have a strong enough resume to jump Alabama. They're still fairly low in the rankings. I think they're 10th, if I'm not mistaken, 9th or 10th. So they will still have a ways they have to go to jump up. You got Oregon and Utah, I think, sitting at 6 and 7. That will likely meet in the Pac-12 championship. And so if you have 2 one-loss teams meet the Pac-12 championship, one wins convincingly, that would probably jump them over Alabama if the other scenarios were to play out, as we talked about a moment ago. If one of those teams was to lose between now and then and enter the Pac-12 championship as a 2-loss team and beat the other team that might be a 1-loss, with a 2-loss Pac-12 champion, that would probably help Alabama. I don't think a 2-loss Pac-12 champion is going to jump over Alabama and grab that 4th spot. So that's kind of what you're basically looking at there.
There's, like you said, there's a lot that needs to happen. The biggest thing that we're looking at, though, is, of course, the Auburn win, the win over Auburn. And what you said earlier makes a lot of sense, and this argument's been coming up a lot, and there's a lot of people that don't seem to understand the fact that Alabama has won multiple championships, and most of their championships with a game-managing quarterback. They haven't won it with a Jalen Hurts or Tua Tagovailoa type of quarterback. They've won it with a game manager, somebody that sits back and hands off and waits for an alleyway in the play action and gets the job done that way. They've won it with guys like A.J. McCarron, even guys like Jake Coker. They've won championships with guys that
Greg McElroy.
Yeah, Greg McElroy. I mean, guys that never made anything of themselves in the NFL because they didn't have that huge arm talent or that huge those legs, the legs that take you all the way, or being able to look off a safety completely. Just all you have to do is be a respectable field manager and or game manager and a field general to get your team rolling and get those running backs, hitting heavy on the ground and open up some lanes downfield in the play action passing game. And that's really the formula. Now, I understand all offenses, in any level of football now have changed. Now it's just not like that. It's not the typical style of offense now. It can still be ran against any type of defense. Yeah. It's not like the defenses have changed or the defenses are getting a certain way. The defenses are adapting to what they're seeing. The defenses are adapting to the spread offense, these wide receivers, these high-flying guys. So it's really not a matter of that. It's a matter of, are the running backs going to be able to get in a momentum where they used to be at Alabama, where Alabama used to have 3-4 guys that could be rotated out and just grind up defensive linemen and grind up that yardage. So now we really only have one capable back at Alabama that we're looking at, and that's Najee Harris. The rest of the Alabama backs have been surprisingly just disappointing. Just disappointing this year. I mean, Brian Robinson by himself has not been anything to go crazy over, anything to make any kind of noise over. I mean, he's an average running back, has made a couple of off-tackle runs. You got a guy like Jerome Ford behind him, who's pretty decent, hasn't really had a shot to show himself as well, just because we've had Najee kind of carry the load. But I think Brian Robinson and Najee Harris are capable of making that 1-2 punch type thing if they can get a little bit more rhythm together. Because really right now it's the Najee Harris show, and you know as well as I do, you can't rely on one back to take you through multiple games. You gotta rotate those backs, and Nick Saban knows that as well. So I'm sure he's looking toward leaning on the backs in these next couple games. Especially against Auburn, that's just going to be the way to do it, these off-tackle runs and these play actions downfield. So that's going to be the way to do it. And yeah, it just sucks going away from a quarterback that last year threw for 43 touchdowns, 3,966 yards, completed 69% of his passes. I mean, Tua Tagovailoa is special. If he never suits up in an Alabama jersey again, we do have to say he was the most special quarterback that I've ever seen in college football. By far. I mean, nobody has ever looked like Tua, has shown anything just close to Tua's talent, his arm talent, his or not his arm talent per se, but just the way that he uses his eyes to make his arm look so well deep downfield. Just looking off the safeties in the second and 26 in the national championship game versus Georgia. I mean, there's so many different plays that he has looked so special in and so just mesmerizing to a football fan, especially a college football fan, just watching this kid play. And he's one of the best to ever do it in college football already. So if he never suits up in an Alabama jersey again, there you go. But like I said, he'll be back doing athletics in 3 months, back to throwing in 6 months. His doctor, Dr. Kane, said it was one of the most miraculous recoveries is ever going to see. So that's pretty good news. So hopefully, he decides to do whatever, is right for him at the time. Nobody knows, if he's going into the draft or if he's going to be able to play or whatever is going to happen, if he's going to come back to Bama. Nobody knows. But whatever happens to Tua Tagovailoa, we all wish him the best. He is one of the greatest to ever do it on the college football gridiron by far. That's just it. That's really all I can say about that. That's just 100% the end of that argument. And whether Nick Saban decided to keep him in or not, it just shows he's a warrior. Tua is a warrior. He just has that mentality, and he's not going to give up. He's definitely not going to give up a chance to run 2-minute offense. So that's why we love Tua so much, and wish him the best. All right. So moving on from that was the biggest news. That was what everybody was talking about this week. But yeah, moving on from that. I guess some stuff transitioning into the NFL for a second. Some stuff that we meant to talk about earlier, and when we saw it earlier last week, the Browns and the Steelers Thursday night brawl. I know we both saw that. That was insane. Yeah. That's another thing everybody's talking about this week, and that just shows you how much news is going around this week. How much actual football news. The rest is just kind of nothing. But yeah, so Browns and Steelers. On a play, I think Mason Rudolph got sacked, right? He got sacked, and then I think he tried to pull Miles Garrett's helmet off a little bit, or he was fiddling with his helmet, and then Mason Rudolph stood up. Miles Garrett, after getting into an altercation, pulled his helmet off, and after being pushed back by about 3 Steelers linemen, tried to hit Mason Rudolph in the head with his helmet, and successfully hit him in the side of the head with his helmet.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's pretty much the biggest thing everybody's been talking about. Yeah, I know everybody watching this, that's familiar with it, saw it, because it was the biggest thing in professional sports this week. I mean, everybody's talking about how it could be an assault charge and he could be suspended for a whole season. Yeah, that was pretty crazy. I mean, he literally just started whipping him with the helmet, just started going to town on his head. I mean. Can't do that, especially when you just saw that injury from Tua. You gotta play it safer.
No, especially nowadays when at both the college and NFL level, that all the rules and other legislation been put into place to try to protect the players and try to prevent injuries, for a player to take off another player's helmet and then pop him on top of the head as hard as he can. I'm sure he had to have gotten a concussion from that, which is, a huge thing in the NFL nowadays, concussion protocol. And so, you can't do that. Of course, Myles Garrett, has already been suspended for the remainder of the season and for any possible postseason games the Browns may qualify for, which they probably won't, but. And then he's got to have a meeting with the commissioner and other
Derek Brooks,
NFL personnel to try before he gets reinstated. So who knows if he might end up having to miss at least part of next season as well. We don't know that yet, but he's Myles Garrett's gonna this is a career tarnishing incident. This is something he's always going to be remembered for, no matter what he does from this point forward in his NFL career. It's something that's going to stay with him. And not only that, you look at the amount of money he's going to lose from not being able to play. So he's
I mean, it's happened multiple times. This is the third time this season an altercation has happened with him.
Yeah, he's going to end up paying dearly for this one.
I mean, he gets what he deserves. This is the third time. It's not like this is the first time. It's not the second time. This is the third time. An altercation happened in week 1, week 6, and this week. And, it can't keep happening like this. I mean, something has to go down with Myles Garrett to, get him to quit this kind of behavior. And, I know you're a defensive end. You're a hot shot. You're one of the best players on the Browns. I get it. But even if Mason Rudolph, aggravated that, or he made it worse, he tried to get at you the whole game. I mean, he's a quarterback. At the end of the day, I mean, you really just can't hit a quarterback in the side of the head with a helmet. And that's just that goes beyond the NFL rules, right? That goes just the type of player that Myles Garrett is, the type of player that Mason Rudolph is. I mean, he's a guy that's a quarterback. He's a guy that stands back there all game, even if he's aggravating the assault the whole time, even if he's agging it on. You can't. That gives you no reason to just start hitting the dude with the helmet. And it would look better. I'm not gonna lie. It would look better if Mason Rudolph wasn't a quarterback. If that guy was, an O lineman and he was beating an O lineman. But this is a quarterback, man. You're on a primetime game on a Thursday night. You just cannot be doing this kind of stuff. And he knows that as well as anybody. And now he's paying the price with that suspension. So. I wonder how Derek Brooks and the rest of the NFL execs are going to treat him in the future when it comes to next season. Because hopefully, he gets a chance to redeem himself. But this is the third time. So we'll see what happens in the future with that. But that was crazy. Also in the same game, local alumni Deontay Johnson was concussed by Demarius Randall, I think it was. Demarius Randall hit him in a head-to-head target, I believe, and he was concussed.
Oh yeah.
So that was in the same game. So I don't know what it was about the Steelers and the Browns, or I guess just the Browns in total. But they were hitting dirty on defense, and that's no joke.
Yeah, you have to realize in that division that that those teams play in, That's the way those matchups are. They're physical, brutal, hard hitting football games. Both teams are out to, I mean, try to punish the other team's players. They're going to hit you as hard as they can, and anytime you see matchups between the Steelers and the Browns, Steelers and Ravens, Ravens and Browns, Browns Steelers, Bengals Browns, whatever. That's just the way those games are. It's one of those. It's really the black and blue division of the NFL.
Yeah.
That's
Definitely the Steelers and the Bengals. That's always,
at least in the AFC anyway. I mean, those are the games between the teams those in that division are the ones that are going to be among the most physical games that you'll see the entire season. Just like the in the NFC, in the division you have the Packers, Bears, Lions, Vikings. It's the same way.
yeah, I would say those divisions are pretty similar for
Yeah.
each conference. Yeah. Yeah, I mean that's like you said, it's like the Iron Bowl. It's like watching the Iron Bowl in the NFL. Any of those teams, especially the Steelers and the Bengals. I don't really know about what it is about the Steelers, but typically it's the other team that plays them that brings it on. Because the Bengals last year, I mean, I think it was 2017. I mean, we all remember what happened with Vontae's birthday. If it wasn't last year, it was the year before.
Yeah.
But completely laid out Antonio Brown, and then Juju had to lay out somebody for him. I mean, it was bad. Those guys getting fist fights. I mean, some guys even bleed over these fights in the NFL, especially that conference, that division. So yeah, that's pretty crazy. The fact that we saw that on a primetime game. And everybody was talking about that. That was the biggest thing, and that is just because it acts as like a beacon now for the NFL to see. Okay, maybe we need to make the league safer again. Maybe we need to have this whole movement of making the league safer, and they've done this for so long. At this point, you've made all these rules, all these pass interference rules. We saw it last year with Clay Matthews trying to get, I think it was like 3 sacks or 3 touches on the quarterback that were illegal in a row. And they've done all they can to make the game safe with the legislation that they can put on their own company, but I just don't know if the players are receiving it. I don't think the players are just totally enforcing it. We see target calls all the time. We see a lot of pass interference still. We see, I mean, now it's like when you see a tackle, you have to pray that it's not pass interference. I mean, you literally have to sit there and wish and hope that it's not pass interference or not targeting. I mean, because when a guy lowers his helmet and he's coming to tackle, that could be it for that player for a whole season, at least a whole game. So that's just the kind of stuff that you're seeing now, and I guess the NFL just has to do a better job at enforcing those rules and grinding it into the culture of being an NFL defender, because typically it's with the defenders.
Well, and one thing too, you got a lot of guys, this is at both the college and pro level, who, even though I'm sure they are probably taught the correct fundamentals as far as technique or tackling technique, a lot of these guys still want to just throw their bodies in other players, which causes them to lead with their head sometimes. It does cause helmet-to-helmet contact sometimes. Sometimes it's done on purpose. Many times it's probably unintentional, but it still happens, and that's from guys not wanting to tackle properly, not wanting to run up, wrap your him low, wrap them up, and bring them down. You still get guys that want to hit high. They just want to throw their body into the player and knock them down. They don't want to tackle properly, and I think sometimes that leads to these targeting calls that we've been seeing.
It's also the new rules, yeah. I mean, especially in the NFL only because collegiate doesn't have those new, very specific set of rules yet. But yeah, in the pro level, the reason is, just because of all that strict legislation now at that gridiron level. Now you can't hit anybody in that way, and if you do, I mean, there's a huge, consequence for it. So yeah, it's just harder now to avoid those kind of suspensions, those kind of hits, those kind of breaks in the law, I guess, of the NFL. So yeah, you're going to see a lot more of it probably, but hopefully it doesn't translate to these fights. We're always going to see deep rivalry games with lots of toughness everywhere, but hopefully it doesn't translate to more of these, fights all across the league. Yeah. All right. So yeah, moving on from that, that was kind of big. You know, everybody was really referring to that this week. So other stuff that we've been seeing, the Heisman race. Right now, everybody's talking about it. When people are actually breaking down the news and breaking down sports, we're looking at the Heisman, or not the Heisman, but the MVP race. And so when we look at the MVP race right now in the NFL, there's really two guys that come to mind. Number one is Lamar Jackson. He's the first guy that everybody's talking about, the one guy that's lighting up the league on fire. And then we have another guy who's done this for a while, but now he's doing it at a level that is not seen by any other quarterback, Russell Wilson. Um, there are a lot of reasons to pick either one of these guys for the MVP race, for the MVP. And we have to make a decision on who is going to be, who do we think the MVP is going to be. Now all week, my friends, everybody has been, we've been discussing this, and my answer is going to sound very boring, right? Because Lamar Jackson, he's lighting the league up. Like I said, this year already, he has 2,258 yards, only 19 touchdowns, but he has just 5 interceptions. And for somebody last year that was turning the ball over and over and over again, that's not that bad when we look at it. So if we look at his game stats in total right now, his rushing ability is insane. I mean, against everybody he plays, he lights it up like he's a running back. Just against Houston, beating Houston 41-7, one of the best teams right now, beating them 41-7. Against them, he rushed 9 times for 86 yards. On top of that, he's a quarterback now. He's a complete quarterback. I mean, he passed 24 times, completed 17 of them for 222 yards and 4 touchdowns. And like I said, ran for 86 yards and 9 rushes. His best game so far, rushing wise, was, against Cincinnati, who's the worst defense in the league, I would say. But, 19 rushes for 152 yards, 8 yards per rush. I mean, that's insane. And against that same team, he actually threw for 33 passes, completed 21 of them for 236 yards. So these kind of numbers from Lamar Jackson, they're crazy. He's lighting up the entire league right now. And there's no disputing it. He is really just the number one guy. He's the face of the NFL right now. Last year it was Patrick Mahomes. This year it's Lamar Jackson. But when we look at an MVP race, you're looking at, it's really just a quarterback competition at this point. You're really looking at the guy that is going to he's going to win games. He comes in clutch. There's intangibles, but mainly who's just the better player, who has better stats, but also at the same time who has more athleticism, who has the intangibles. And for that reason, I think it's Russell Wilson. Now I know Russell Wilson cannot run for as much as Lamar Jackson can. He never has. He's not going to run for 120 yards a game, 150 yards a game. Russell Wilson is going to throw that ball. He's going to throw it deep. He's got one of the best arms in the league. Just against Atlanta, which was one of the worst defenses when they played him. Completed 14 of his passes. Had a really good game that night. He threw for 2 touchdowns, and that was one of his better games for fantasy. He's putting up a lot of fantasy points, and that's one thing you want to see. And just everywhere you look, he's kind of just tearing it up. I think against the Buccaneers with the win, that was 40-34. Passed for 43, completed 29, 5 touchdowns. That's an MVP performance right there. Had 1 rush for 21 yards. I mean, that's a big MVP performance, and I say he's better than Lamar Jackson in the Heisman race solely because he can make those kind of throws all the time. And also, he doesn't play in a system right now that is consisting of so many moving parts and so many defenses that are trying to figure you out. The defenses already have Russell Wilson figured out. They're chasing him down for his life every time he takes a snap. They're chasing him 10 yards behind the line of scrimmage. I mean, there's not much you can say. I would put Russell Wilson over that Lamar Jackson threshold just because the fact that defenses have him figured out. Lamar Jackson plays in a system where defenses don't really know about them yet. And not only that, but he plays sometimes in a triple Heisman backfield. Lamar Jackson, Mark Ingram, and Robert Griffin. I mean, those guys are crazy. I mean, each one of those guys are great runners, great athletes. Those guys know exactly what they're doing, and defenses have no idea what they're doing. So I put it on Russell Wilson to win the MVP, just because Lamar Jackson can come back and win it next year. Russell Wilson is a guy that doesn't have much time left to be the kind of athlete that he is. These kind of quarterbacks do not, I mean, they don't last this long. It's Russell Wilson's time to shine, to get that MVP trophy, get that MVP title. He deserves it. I really think he deserves it. He's been running for his life all these years now from that O-line. Finally, he's shown that if given a great O-line, he can be probably the best quarterback in this league. From an athleticism wise, I mean, from an athleticism standpoint, he's looking really good, narrowing around 70% of all his passes. And when you're running around like that, you don't have much time. Defenses know you. I think that's an MVP right there.
Yeah, I mean, if I had to pick between the two, I would think that Russell Wilson probably has the edge in the MVP race. I think as number one, Russell, I think has had the benefit. Well, not the benefit. His team has just simply been involved in a lot of close games that they have won, and primarily that's been because of his performance on the field. The Seahawks defense just simply isn't as good as the Ravens is. The Ravens have not played in a lot of close games, but Russell Wilson has had to come with several fourth quarter clutch performances for them to pull out some of these games. So I would say that right now that would give him the edge in winning that award.
I completely agree. It's Russell Wilson. It's a guy we all know and love. Like you said, the defense. A lot of close games. He plays those games. Lamar Jackson is tearing it up because he has opportunities to tear it up, and Russell Wilson has to create these opportunities. And not take away anything from Lamar Jackson. He's a phenomenal athlete, and we are all lucky to sit here and watch him play. And this is why. Mike Vick only had a few years of this type of experience before, what happened to him. And somebody like Lamar Jackson could easily get injured on one play, easily just deteriorate and because of injuries or because of just anything. Any little reason you give a mobile quarterback to fail, they will fail. I mean, they are so fragile at this point, and not fragile as in durability, but they're fragile as in their value. Just being able to trick a defense like that is so useful, especially in the NFL when everybody uses a set defense. There's very rare, blitz packages that are came up with or created and designed now for these type of teams. And when you make an offense like this, when you introduce a player like this is where you see brand new defenses. I mean, this is where defenses come to shine and defensive coordinators come to make their jobs. So, not to take anything away from him. I mean, he's generational. We're all lucky to watch him play right now. He's going crazy. He's balling out, and I can't wait to see what he does the rest of the season. Maybe he could take that away from Russell Wilson. But right now, I think Russell Wilson is the better quarterback. Therefore, I think he's the better position to win that MVP. He's in the better position. So that's what I think about that. It is a tough call though. They're both phenomenal athletes by far. I think.
Yeah, Russell it's hard. It's hard to make a choice between the two. They both have played very well this year. Like I said, I think because of the way both teams' seasons have gone, the fact that Seattle has played in a lot of close games, and Russell Wilson has been the turning factor in winning some of those, I think gives him a little bit of an edge right now.
I agree.
But that's several weeks ago, so we'll have to see how it plays out.
All right, so moving on from the MVP race. One thing that I've been talking about for a while, a couple weeks now, is there are very few times in the NFL when you see a team lose 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 games in a row, have the 32nd best defense in the league, the worst defense in the league, giving up so many points per game. And then all of a sudden, after a bye week, come out and beat your rival, the New Orleans Saints, in their house, 26-9, hold them to 0 touchdowns, and do the same exact thing to the Panthers the next week. And now you have the best defense in the league because you're the only team to not allow a touchdown in 10 quarters of football. The Atlanta Falcons have not allowed 1 touchdown in 10 quarters of football. This defense, after a bye week, here's what happened. Dan Quinn, the head coach of the Atlanta Falcons, gave his play calling abilities for that defense to the linebackers coach and I believe a wide receivers coach or another assistant coach on that team. Now they are co-defensive coordinators, him and the other random assistant coach, the linebackers coach and the other assistant coach. Yeah, so they're co-defensive coordinators, and when they came out against the Saints and beat them 26-9, that was insane. Literally nobody expected that. On defense, held the Saints to 52 yards rushing. I mean, when you look at other things, like let's look at other things, right? Let's look at how they were playing before. Let's look at the game against the Texans. 426 pass yards. That's what they allowed. The game against the Cardinals with a rookie like Kyler Murray, 340 yards allowed. Those guys suck. The Cardinals are bad. The Los Angeles Rams, 291 pass yards. The Seahawks, not as much, but 171 pass yards. I mean, these guys are passing balls like it's nothing on the Atlanta Falcons. And then after a bye week, all of a sudden, they just decided to show up and play football. Now, I mean, when we get down to the nitty-gritty of it, we can look at what's going on. Defensively, who's leading that defense? Well, there's a lot of players that come into play. Number one is, Grady Jarrett. He could be a Pro Bowl defensive tackle right now. I mean, right now, you're looking at, for Grady Jarrett, you're looking at 25 solo tackles. I think he has about 13 QB hits right now. So you're looking at a lot of stuff for Grady Jarrett that's looking really good. And another thing is the defense is playing these packages now where these corners and these DBs get to kind of choose where they're going to be on the field. They get to choose their zones, if you will. They get to basically call their own shots a little bit in the flats and where they are. And as a result, what it has done, it has created a nightmare for quarterbacks. It's timing. Dan Quinn described it as timing. And this is what the linebackers coach is telling him. He's relaying to him is that what he wants to do is create more coverage, more underneath line coverage for these receivers. So these quarterbacks have to look over shoulders. They have to walk outside and get an opening. They have to get a gap. They have to wait. They need time. They need to watch it develop. These guys are chucking these guys at the line of scrimmage. They have to wait. It just creates more time. And as a result, you don't send another blitzer. You don't have to go and pay for Aaron Donald to come join the Falcons. Instead, you create more time for your defensive guys to go in there and get the quarterback. You create just more time instead of, trying to lessen the time by putting somebody back there as quick as you can and sacrificing the pass coverage. You create better pass coverage underneath, allowing a big shot downfield, but trusting your secondary, and at the same time putting these D linemen in such a great position to get in there and sack the quarterback. And they have some really good D linemen over there in Atlanta. That is 100% true. You got Ty McKinley, who's really fast on the edge, Grady Jarrett on the interior, Vic Beasley on the edge, who was a sack leader one year. And you got John Kaminsky as well on the inside. And you got new guys that are coming up and new guys trying to make their name. And then Adrian Claiborne as well is back for the Falcons, so he's adding to that as well. You got really good pass rushers, you got really good interior D linemen. So, yeah, that was one thing. A lot of people were talking about, especially in fantasy, especially on First Take and shows like that. I mean, a lot of people were talking about this newfound Falcons defense. Where did it come from? Nobody knows, but they sure did find one. They found a defense here, and I know Falcons fans are lucky to see that because now, they're going from. They're going from 1-7 to 2-7 to 3-7. Now, if the Falcons totally win out here and the Saints collapse, the Falcons can make it into the playoffs. That's not going to happen. We all know that's not going to happen. But the Falcons have made their run this year. So if they keep it up like this defensively all year, we could be in a treat to watch these other teams play. Literally all year. I mean, back to back, the Falcons play their rivals. They play the Saints, then they play the Panthers. They go to Tampa Bay, or Tampa Bay comes to Atlanta, And then the Saints come to Atlanta, and then the Panthers come to Atlanta, and then so they play all their rivals back to back. And then there's one game in Tampa on December 29th. That's always that late holiday season game. This game's not even in the holiday season. This game's actually out of the holiday season, December 29th. That's going to be a good one, though, always against the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. So, yeah, that's the Falcons' defense. That's what I wanted to bring up. That's very interesting that out of nowhere, I mean, I've never really seen anything like this out of nowhere where they hold their two division rivals to no touchdowns. No touchdowns in 10 quarters of football. It's crazy. So now, I guess a lot of people are talking about the wild card in the NFC. We already know the wild card in the AFC. We already speculate who it's going to be. We already pretty much know. It's the Bills and the Raiders, we think. But who do you think could be the wild card in the NFC right now? And a lot of people have been saying that one of the teams that are in the lead for the for the playoffs will actually drop down and become the wild card for the NFC. So we will see about that. I don't think anybody's going to drop because these teams are actually really good. We do have to look though and see who exactly is teetering on that kind of brink. So right now, we are seeing the 49ers and the Packers maybe at the divisional round. That's what the NFL predicts. And the Patriots-Ravens at the division round for the AFC, just the but we're talking about the NFC. So I'm going to say it can't be, obviously any of these divisional teams. But one team I'm going to say actually is the Eagles. I think the Eagles, for a little bit, have been shown that they might be able to clinch the NFC. They've kind of always shown that. They've kind of always here, except for the past couple years here, they've kind of been really good. But the only thing that stops me from saying the Eagles could get in the wild card is just they have such a bad chemistry now on that offense with the quarterback and the wide receivers. I mean, Carson Wentz can't hit anybody, and Nelson Aguilar is dropping balls left and right. And I don't understand what's going on with the chemistry and the connection between these guys. So if I didn't put the Eagles in, I would definitely put the Rams in. And you have to pick two, I know, but the Rams for sure. They're going in, and there's no way they're beating out the Seahawks. No way. The Seahawks are way better than the Rams in every single way, quarterback, defense, whatever. But I think the Rams can clinch that wild card spot. It's just a matter of who else is going to do it. I don't think the Panthers are going to do it. I don't see the Bears doing it. I guess it honestly would have to be the Eagles because I just don't see the Panthers and Bears doing it. The Lions are at 3-6-1. They could possibly do it. It's a very low chance that they could win out all the way and do it. But they could do it, and if there's any team here that could do it besides the Eagles, I would probably pick the Lions. But I'm just saying the Eagles just because it's the safest bet. So I don't know who you would choose, but that's who I would choose just because it's the safest bet. I don't like the Eagles right now this year for anything, but it is the safest option.
Yeah, I mean, as far as the wild card NFC, well, first of all, you got to look at who you think's going to win each division. Yeah, I still think the Cowboys are going to end up winning the NFC East. They've had some issues. I still think that they're set up better to win that division right now than the Eagles are. So we'll have to see about that. And it looks like the Saints are a safe bet to win the NFC South. They've got a 3-game lead right now, so that looks like that's probably going to happen. So you got two divisions that are basically up for grabs right now. NFC North, you got the Packers 8-2, and the Vikings are 8-3. Nobody else is close to them right now. NFC West, you got the Niners at 9-1, and the Seahawks 8-2. You got the Rams, who still have a chance. They're sitting there at 6-4. But yeah, I mean, right now, if I had to make a guess, I would have to say that I think overall, I think the Vikings are probably a little bit better team than the Packers are.
Think so?
All the way around. And right now, the Packers have half-game lead, but it wouldn't surprise me if the Vikings won that division. But even if they win, the Packers are going to be a wild card. And I think the Niners will probably end up winning the West because their defense is so good. But I think the Seahawks would grab the other wild cards. So right now, I think the wild card would probably be the Packers and the Seahawks. That would be my best guess.
Wild card Packers and Seahawks. That's
Yeah.
a good matchup, honestly. Yeah, I could see that. Yeah, the Packers would have to collapse, a little bit because they're 8-2 right now. They would kind of have to collapse, but I kind of see them doing that, right? Because their defense is good.
Well,
I don't think it's that good though. I don't think it's good as the 49ers, right? Because they still have a schedule ahead of them where they have some close calls.
And you look at the Packers, you compare the Packers and the Vikings. Their defense, they've both given up 205 points each. So they're basically fairly even defensively.
I think the Packers have just gotten more luck handed to them on defense, and the Vikings have played one more game than the Packers have.
Yeah, and Kirk Cousins has played pretty good, but I think one thing gives the Vikings the edge is they're a better running team with Dalvin Cook.
Yeah.
Not only is he he's done really well running the ball, he's a really good receiver out of the backfield, so they've been able to use him for that as well. Green Bay, I mean, they have some guys they run in now there that kind of do okay running the ball, but they don't have like a real number one back, a go-to guy, a guy that you really have to game plan for to try to stop like the Vikings do. I think that Dalvin Cook gives them a bit of an edge there.
Yeah, Aaron Rodgers kind of has to create. It's kind of like a similar situation with the older Russell Wilson. Like Aaron Rodgers kind of has to create, and this is a reason why we're not seeing him in the the MVP race now. He doesn't have those weapons. Russell Wilson does, which is why, we're talking about Russell Wilson in the MVP race now. He finally has his weapons. And, Aaron Rodgers just doesn't. So he's not able to really carry that offense as well. And the Vikings just have a better offense to me. Aaron Rodgers has to carry it on his back. Kirk Cousins is playing well. Dalvin Cook's playing well. That O-line is playing significantly well. That O-line is playing one of the best I've seen from the Vikings ever. I mean, they are opening up so many lanes for Dalvin Cook, and he's never been able to hit as many holes as he has this season. I mean, he's doing really, really well there in Minnesota, and I think they could get it done. Yeah, I definitely think they could pass the Packers. That's very realistic. Yeah. All in all, NFC's. I can't really tell who's more competitive, NFC or AFC, because these guys are crazy.
Well, I think the overall balance in NFL as a whole, I think you got a larger group of good teams in the NFC than you do in the AFC. I think NFC overall is a bit stronger because you look at it. I mean, you got the prospect of maybe having a 9, maybe even a 10-win team that's going to be left out of the playoffs because. Like I said, you've got if you look beyond the guys or the team that you think are going to win the divisions, you got a team like Philadelphia who could possibly not win it with a winning record and could get left out. You got Carolina. They're probably not going to be in there, but you never know. They're sitting 5-5 right now, so you have to worry about them, but. You got a couple teams realistic, such as the Rams at 6-4, Eagles 5-5. That theoretically could end up finish winning records and still be left out of the playoffs.
Mm-hmm.
And here you look at the AFC, you could possibly end up with a team that finishes 8-8 in the AFC and make the wild card. Because you got the Patriots and the Ravens. Looks like they're not a lot, but they look like they're pretty strong in a pretty strong position to win their divisions. You have to figure the Bills they keep playing with are going to grab at least a wild card, and looks like the other wild card is going to be up for grabs between the team in the AFC South and the team in the West. Yeah, I think overall though the NFC is a stronger conference, and like I said, I wouldn't be surprised if there was a team that finishes 8-8 and ends up making the wild card.
In the AFC, right?
AFC.
Yeah. Everything in the AFC is just. I would say it's more explosive, than the NFC. I know the NFC is more competitive, but yeah, the AFC is looking more explosive. You got the Ravens in there, the Texans, the Chiefs. It's all just really like an explosive conference this year. I mean, it's going to be nice if you do see some tiebreakers or something between any of these guys, and the NFC might be where you see it. But yeah, I would love to see the Falcons come back, and they have I think they said 1% chance to make the playoffs or something, or over 1% or like 7% or something. I don't know, something like that. But it would be nice to see if they won out completely. What would happen there if the Saints maybe were to lose some games and have a tie-breaking procedure there go on with the Falcons and the Saints. So yeah, that would be cool to see with that new Falcons defense ripping up people. But yeah, overall we have a competitive year in the NFL. This at the beginning of the year it didn't look that raw, it didn't look that competitive. But now we're seeing teams kind of mold and take shape, and just Lamar Jackson just becoming the face of the NFL and the Packers defense. So many different stories that we thought we wouldn't see, last year that we're seeing now. And 49ers being the best team, in the league. Who saw that? I mean, these guys are playing phenomenally. All of these teams are playing really well. It's going to be a fun year it's going to be a fun playoff towards the end of the year. That's for sure. I mean, people that don't even like any of these teams, and if you're a Panthers fan or you're a Jaguars fan, I mean, still, these playoffs should be amazing. These playoffs should be fun because there's so many teams in here that you can root for players on every single one of them. So I'm looking forward to the playoffs. And I'm definitely looking forward to just the end of the season, especially college football too, which we talked about earlier. But yeah. So yeah, guys, I think we're going to kind of end the podcast off earlier tonight. But yeah, we talked about a lot of good stuff today. Had a great time talking to you guys about the NFL. Tua's unfortunate injury. What's next for Alabama? What's next for Tua? What's next in the college football playoff? We had a fun time talking about all that stuff. And I hope you guys join us next week, next Tuesday, on the football forecast when we do another episode. And yeah, so I guess that's pretty much it. Unless you have anything else to add.
No,
that's
good.
It. All right. And yeah, we'll see you guys next Tuesday. Thank you.